Hey guys, in this video we're gonna keep looking at the progress check questions, the FRQ ones for Unit 2, which is going to cover cell structure and function. So looking at this one, what they do is they're showing you a diagram of a plasma membrane, which you guys have all seen before. Some of you guys modeled one for your Unit 2 projects. And okay, so it represents a plasma membrane and the molecules present on either side. Great. Okay, so that's a model of a plasma membrane demonstrating selective permeability, meaning that some things can get through and some things can't. And the first part of the question just wants you to describe the biological need for cells to be surrounded by a membrane that is selectively permeable for different materials. Well, basically, the idea is one of those things that you need to be alive, right? Is the idea of homeostasis, right? The need for a constant internal environment that differs, right, from the external environment. And there's a bunch of things that kind of go along with that, meaning that you'll have to move certain things in and out, right? You'll have to be able to move waste products out. You'll have to be able to move, for us, things like oxygen and glucose into the cell. And you need some sort of barrier in between the internal environment and the external environment to enable you to do that. Cool. And all right, so looking at the second part, explain how the model shows selective permeability of the membrane to specific ions. Okay, well, there's kind of two things that I'm seeing here. Number one, it's saying that it's showing that they can't move through the bilayer, right? So it shows that ions can't move through the bilayer. But these small lipid-soluble molecules can. As you can see, they can just kind of go right through that phospholipid bilayer, that plasma membrane. So that's one thing that I see. And then the other thing that I see is that only some ions, right, only one of the two shown, one of the two ions shown can pass through the membrane channel. So that I'm just getting right here because I see these shaded ones going through and these spotted ones, stippled ones, whatever, can't. Cool. So let's take a look. And it looks like, yeah, so it separates the internal environment from the external, or that a membrane that is selectively permeable can help to regulate what molecules move between the differing environments inside and outside of the cell. So sure, in our answer, if we would have talked about homeostasis, separate internal environment, that would have been fine. So for part B, membrane channel protein is selective for a specific kind of ion, because only one of the two kinds of ions represented can pass. Also indicates that ions cannot simply cross directly between the phospholipids of the membrane, although a small soluble molecule can. So just no, ions can't go through on their own. These can't. And that kind of feeds into part C of the question that says, okay, so describe the characteristics of the phospholipid bilayer that permits small hydrophobic lipid molecules to pass directly across the membrane. So it goes back to kind of what we were talking about yesterday, or in Unit 1, in the Unit 1 project check, there was a question about phospholipids there as well. And really, what we have talked about there is that each of these phospholipids has a polar head and a nonpolar, what we call hydrophobic tail. That's why they end up on the inside, away from the aqueous environment of the cell. And again, these polar ones are going to be hydrophilic. And the idea is that in chemistry, we always talk about how like dissolves like. And so what that means is if you are a small lipid-soluble molecule, that's going to be nonpolar and hydrophobic. So since most of the cell membrane is nonpolar and hydrophobic, the interior of it, you can have things that are like this interior portion just slip through, right? Because they sort of go right through. They interact sort of weakly with these hydrophobic chains, and basically, since the idea of like dissolves like, you can just get this thing right through, since it's small and it's also nonpolar. So what I believe this is talking about is that the interior of cell membrane is hydrophobic. So it's hydrophobic, and so molecules that are also hydrophobic can go through. And at the end, okay, based on the model, explain whether the molecules shown crossing the membrane require energy to do so. So again, this is just like the first question in this unit. This is a question about active versus passive transport. And again, as we kind of know, active is going to be requires energy. And as we talked about in the last video, it's going to go from an area of lower concentration to an area of higher concentration. And then passive transport is going to be no energy required. So great. Okay, so we have to look at the concentration gradients here. So active is going to be, for example, low to high concentration, and passive transport is going to be high to low. So let's look at the diagram and see which type of transport we're talking about here. So it looks to me like we are moving here from an area of higher concentration to low. So that's passive. That's going to be passive transport. Same thing here. Higher concentration to lower concentration. So passive transport, and then kind of as part of passive transport, no energy required, right? So high to low concentration kind of leads you to passive transport, which then in turn leaves you to no energy required. Cool. All right, so now let's just check our answers here. Interior of phospholipid bilayer is hydrophobic, which allows small hydrophobic molecules to diffuse across the membrane. Cool. And then the response indicates that energy is not required because the substances are being passively transported, right? Just like we said, sort of passively transported. Energy is not required. Passively transported, and then again, higher concentration to lower concentration. Cool. Okay. I will be back shortly with the FRQ progress check videos for Unit 3. Thanks.